Hi everyone! So today I'm joined by Isla. Hi Isla!
Hey, how's it going?
It's been such a long time since we did this last time. I mean, it was the first video, right?
Yeah,
So
it's been ages since the
yeah,
oysters.
yeah.
Yeah,
But it's so nice to have you here again.
thank you.
Oh, and before anything else, everyone who's watching this in the account, please feel free to comment with any questions or thoughts or anything, and we will try to reply with with something smart to everything. So yeah, anyway, this time in this project we're working to restore several really special habitats. So maybe you could, Isla, start with explaining a bit or introducing us to these habitats, what they are and what's so special about them.
For sure. So this project we're working in partnership with a community organisation called Arkaig Community Forest. They're great. They own a few areas of land in and around Loch Arkaig, as the name might suggest. But the area that we're talking about today, or that we're focusing in on, and that this project focuses in on, is a section of the Goosich, which is a remnant of Caledonian pinewood, which is on the southern shores of Loch Arkaig. Now, Arkaig Community Forest own a just over 20 hectares area of this forest, and they are surrounded by the Woodland Trust, who are also undertaking habitat restoration. So it's really cool, and it should contribute to a wider impact, basically.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
So
and the habitats.
yeah,
Sorry,
the
you just asked me about the habitats. Focus, Isla. So I'll just list off the habitats and then I'll go into more depth on them.
Oh, yeah,
so
great.
We have Caledonian pinewood forest, and we also have wet woodland, so ancient alder birch woodland, and we also have peatland, which is at the bottom of the slope. So the site is on the banks of the loch and starts off on the low ground, which is peatland, has a couple of watercourses which are bordered by ancient alder birch woodland, which is really lovely, and then kind of at the top you've got a Caledonian pinewood remnant. So that is the South Loch Arkaig Caledonian pinewood remnant on the Caledonian pinewood inventory, and you can look up that report on the Trees for Life website. But so I'll go into more depth about Caledonian pinewood and why it's important. So it's made up of a few different species, but obviously the main one that forms the canopy is Scots pine. There can be some broadleaf trees in there too, but not every single Scots pine woodland is Caledonian pinewood. What's the difference, you might be wondering? The difference is that Caledonian pinewood fragments are genetically descendant from individuals that colonised Scotland after the last ice age. So they're pretty robust, they survived this long,
Wow, yeah.
so they've got a lot of information locked up in their genetics, which makes them resilient, robust to change. So yeah, very special habitat to protect. We've also got that lovely ancient alder birch woodland, like going up alongside the watercourses, and it should actually spread into the wetland areas, including and grading into from the riparian zone, and at the bottom of the hills I've described we've got peatland, which I don't think I really need to introduce peatland.
No.
You should be familiar with that, I'd hope. But so all of this habitat, or the entire site, is in the rainforest zone. So what is the rainforest zone?
Yeah, that sounds so
Do we have
weird.
rainforest in Scotland? It's not really something that we might associate with Scotland or the UK or wider, like, Europe. So it's basically due to climatic conditions. So it has really high rainfall, and it also has, so rainforest habitats, or forests within this zone, support a diversity of species like lichens, bryophytes, so that's your mosses and liverworts, and they're just really spectacular places to be. And yeah, just really special. I'm obviously biased.
No, I think you're right, and I mean, our members will see it in the video, if not before. So Yeah.
Yes.
To be proven, right?
Yes, yeah, to be continued on that, like,
yes.
they'll see. But there are lots of different rainforest types, but the rainforest type that this project mostly focuses on is Caledonian pinewood, which is a rainforest type in the UK only found in Scotland.
Nice. Okay, so what about these habitats? Why, well, now we explained why they are so special, but why do they need our help? Why do they need restoration?
Yeah, so across Scotland we have what are called plantation on ancient woodland sites, which is where, especially after the Second World War, there were timber shortages, people were worried, so they planted up large areas with non-native conifers such as lodgepole pine and Sitka spruce. Some of the areas that were targeted were ancient woodland areas, so they logged out the old trees and planted this basically monoculture crop in multiple places. Now, just to be clear, I don't blame the people that planted the crops. They were concerned, they really needed timber, but now we're starting to recognise the mistakes that we've made, and we want to try and correct. So we're working towards taking out the non-native conifers to allow the other habitats that I've described to regenerate and to breathe, because yeah, there's a lot of there are areas of Sitka spruce and lodgepole pine on the site at Loch Arkaig.
Yeah, okay. And just to kind of make it clear for everyone who is concerned about us cutting trees, what is the difference? Like if you would compare it to this ancient woodland that is supposed to be in this area, compared to this plantation that is there now. Yeah, what is the difference between these two?
Yeah, so I can understand that people might have whiplash with conservationists and other folk being like, yes, we must plant trees, and they're like, no, actually, let's take all the trees out. We don't want trees here anymore. But don't worry, we are thinking about this. A lot of thought has gone into it. So if you were to picture yourself sitting within a Sitka spruce plantation, they're frequently, well, they're most often planted really densely, for one thing, and in rows. There's not much understory present, so there's not that diversity there of other species supported by yeah, they don't create as favourable habitat as the native habitats that we have that establish themselves naturally.
Yeah.
So if you were to compare it to Scots pine woodland, even if you were to compare Scots pine, a really dense Scots pine plantation with Scots pine Caledonian pine woodland, the Caledonian pine woodland has like a fantastic understory of species like blaeberry, which is known as bilberry in some other places, crowberry, bearberry, which is different to blaeberry. I know I just sounded like I said the same thing twice. And wood ants, for example. So yeah, although these crops, so the Sitka spruce plantation, that will be capturing some carbon and it will be holding carbon within it. These trees were all planted at the same time, so they'll be of the same age. So if you think about the longevity of that plantation, it won't have as great a longevity as a naturally establishing and continuing woodland that has all of that lovely genetic information locked up to be robust to different types of change. That Sitka spruce plantation will be much less robust over time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good explanation.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Happy to help.
Yeah, okay. So, and if anyone has questions about that, you can also ask us in the comments. So,
yeah, feel free.
Anyway, we are cutting down trees, right? That's the simple way of putting it. But how are we doing it? Because there are these very important habitats that are in the same area, and these plantations aren't all just like one chunk of plantation. So how are we going about removing the trees?
Yeah, so there are a few ways that we're approaching this. The different areas of the site, because it's not all just completely blanketed with conifer plantation. Obviously we've still got some ancient trees present, some fragments that can regenerate after we have taken out the non-native trees. dependent on the sensitivities at the site, we're using various different methods. The first of these is the use of low impact but conventional harvesting machines. So they'll create brash mats, so they're not using roads, just to be clear. All of this stuff is getting barged in from across the loch because there's no road access to the area of the woods that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So they'll use brash mats, which is basically they take the branches off the side of the trees that we're taking down, and they create kind of roads across the habitat to create as low impact as possible. So that'll be the majority of the site will be felled using that technique, and that will be this winter period. But also we're using more traditional techniques. So a gentleman called Simon is coming out to use even lower impact machinery in more sensitive areas. For example, adjacent to the watercourses, so the riparian areas that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
The wetter areas, such as like next to the peatlands as well, and also areas where there are wood ants nests. And occasionally, Simon brings in the help of his horse Tarzan, who moves logs from the area in which some trees are being felled over to a stacking area. Now, we chatted about this as a team extensively, the sort of involving a horse in these works, but Tarzan works for very short periods and only very occasionally, taking logs to a certain area, and he maybe works for, I think it's like an hour to an hour and a half, 3 times on the days that he's used, with like really long breaks in between. So we're using the best methods we can in the different areas, but the priority is that we have as little impact on the ecosystems at Loch Arkaig as possible. So we're just trying to find that balance to have as low impact as possible, because if we were to go in there and create an absolute mess when we take out all the trees, it's going to take longer for that habitat to recover. So the less evidence there is that we've even been there, apart from obviously you'll see that the trees have been taken down, the better.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you've done a lot of research into all of the different like methods that could be used and evaluated all of them. So yeah.
Absolutely, and we're using the same methods on the site, or the same methodology to the Woodland Trust that's working in the area surrounding the site as well. So yeah, it's been a team effort.
Yeah, okay, that sounds good. So yeah, what about the risks? Are there any risks or like challenges or anything like that? And yeah, and also like for the species that are there. I mean, you already went kind of into it a bit with us, like why we're using these methodologies is kind of good to eliminate risks, but still, are there any remaining ones?
Yes, absolutely. Obviously, we're working near watercourses and we'll be disturbing the ground a bit, so there's risk of sedimentation in watercourses, but obviously that is something that will be monitored really closely by the team at Arkaig Community Forest, and also some individuals from the Woodland Trust. There'll always be eyes on the ground. Also the ecological risk, so for example if a harvester is working really close by to a wood ant's nest. But obviously yes, we've tried to like manage those risks as much as possible by varying the methods that we're using. And yeah, I think I forgot to highlight before, but we're actually removing some risks. There's another area in which we're removing risk from the pinewood, in that on site we have larch, which is non-native, but some of that will be staying in because it's more ecologically in keeping with the area. And we also have Sitka spruce and lodgepole pine, so it's the Sitka spruce and lodgepole pine that will be coming out. And the lodgepole pine is infected with something that's called needle blight, and that can transfer over to Scots pine trees. Okay. So by taking the lodgepole pine out, which is diseased, we are reducing the risk of, you know, regenerating Scots pine being reinfected with this needle blight, and for it to be kept on being passed over and, you know, posing a threat to the Caledonian pinewood.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I hope that covers some of the risks there.
Yeah. I mean, what about this aspect then? Because essentially we're cutting down a part of this plantation, or like we're cutting down the plantation, but like, so it's gonna be a bit of a clear cut.
Yes.
So what is gonna happen with that, the clear cut, and is there any risks with that? And like how are we I mean, because this project isn't, it sounds like we're just gonna go in and cut the trees and then that's it.
Yeah.
But like there is gonna be things happening after the trees are cut also. So could you go into that a bit?
Sure. So for the most part, we are going to be allowing these habitats to naturally regenerate, or sort of facilitating that by taking the non-native conifers out. But the non-native conifers aren't the only threat posed to the trees that will be regenerating, or the rest of the plants, because the understory as well is part of the forest. So they're also vulnerable to overbrowsing. And there are a few ways at which this area of forest is managed in order to reduce the threat of overbrowsing to the habitats that are present. The first is that it's all fenced off. So it has deer fencing. So it's usually like red deer that would come in and might browse. And there are also, so the community does take some deer as well from the area to maintain balance, because obviously we don't have natural predators there. So these are the efforts that those involved in the project are taking to make sure that the habitats will be able to bounce back once we have taken out the trees. But yeah, this will also be monitored, obviously.
Yeah.
So we'll be going in and drone mapping the site prior to felling works being undertaken. So like those nice ortho photo mosaics that you see Tiago making, and I made one with Tiago for the seagrass project as well.
Yeah.
So I'll do that in the first, so prior to any works, and then after the first year, and then so on and so on, and we'll just go on and keep on drone mapping the site. But in addition to that, there is a bank of data from herbivore impact assessments, which is a way that it's a way to monitor the vegetation in an area and the risk that overbrowsing or browsing is presenting to the vegetation there and the rate of recovery. So there are some plots within the site that we are taking trees out of that have been monitored over the years, and these will continue to be monitored so that we actually have data on how the forest is regenerating effectively in these plots.
Oh, that's really interesting. So the forest is left to kind of revive on its own, like nature doing the work that it's made to do. But and I mean there is the ancient forest, or this like natural native forest, that was the word I was looking for there. So I mean it can regenerate from there. But what about all of the, because there has been this plantation, so there's also going to be probably seeds from these non-native trees. So what about that risk of this plantation? Well, I mean, it's probably not going to grow back, but still, you know.
Yeah, so any the site will also be monitored for any young Sitka spruce or lodgepole pines that have just kind of like slipped through the net and they're still there. So they'll be pulled out by the community, by Arkaig Community Forest, with volunteers. So they'll keep on top of that, and these things, they're really quite easy to pull out when they're young. So that kind of sorts that side as well.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah. I should also mention that Arkaig Community Forest are planning to enrichment plant some areas. I believe that there are only a couple of juniper plants on the site, and they'd like juniper to be more of a part of the woodland there and the habitats there. So there will be some species, because they have their own nursery, that they'll be growing on in the nursery and then planting out at the site as well. So there will be, the vast majority will be natural regeneration, but there'll be some enrichment planting, you call it, as well.
Yeah, so we're basically clearing the way for nature to be able to recover, and then giving just a bit of a boost.
Little bit of a helping hand.
Yeah, okay, that sounds really great. So what about long term? Like, if everything goes well, which, I mean, it sounds like it's going to do, considering how many risks we have considered, and yeah, like planning that has been involved. So what's the vision? What do you think this area will look like in, I don't know, many years, let's say?
Oh my goodness, it would be amazing just to walk through it and for it to be difficult to walk through. You know?
Yeah.
You know, we're some, like, because I've been to this site a few times and the easiest parts to walk through are, well, obviously right next to the watercourse, but also through some of the plantation, apart from when you've got a lot of wind blow, which can happen quite a lot with lodgepole pine. Anyway, so yeah, just somewhere really wild that has an interconnected mosaic of habitats would be awesome. And I should also say that looking beyond the fence boundary of the land the Arkaig Community Forest and the Woodland Trust own, there is an estate which is becoming more and more on board with the idea of landscape scale restoration. So this project and this area of land owned by the community could over time become more and more connected to the wider landscape. And I think that's really special.
Yeah, so it could be actually a large area that becomes more natural.
Absolutely, and I should also note that so we have Caledonian pinewood on site, but the Caledonian pinewood that has been identified as most at risk is the pinewood that is present in the southwest of Scotland. So it takes the longest to regenerate. It might just be because of waterlogged soils. So this really is like, you know, the sooner we get going, the more of a chance that this habitat stands of persisting over time.
Yeah. And also in terms of climate change, as you said before, letting this forest recover in this area will make it more resilient in the long term, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. Well, is there anything else you would like to add before we wrap this up?
I think just how special it is to be working on community-owned land in Scotland. Like, and working directly with communities is something that, like here at Mossy Earth, we're really keen to support, and it's yeah, really nice to be working with Arkaig Community Forest on this one. But other than that, yeah, I'm happy to answer anyone's questions should they have them. Feel free to fire us a message.
Leave
I'll
us
do
comments.
my best to get back to you.
We like comments.
But thank you, Maya.
Yeah, okay. Well, also anyone who wants to learn more about this project, as always, we have the management plan. It will be in the project page, right? And there is more information there. So head there to mossy.earth. And yeah, I think that's it. So thank you, everyone. And until next time. Bye.
Thank you very much, guys. Bye.